Welcome to the Progress Portland podcast. I am Kip Silverman, and we have
Ali Wong.
Ali Wong. You want to explain to Emmy why you're doing this, or do you no explanation?
Well, we are often told that all Asians look alike, so I've decided every podcast I'm just going to name another Asian who I am.
All right.
Perfect. And we have Emmy Ritter from Raphael House. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, I am Emmy Ritter from Raphael House. I'm the executive director. I use she, her pronouns.
Great. Thank you for being here. To get started, would you like to tell us a little bit about your background and what Raphael House is and your work as executive director for them?
Yeah, where do you want me to start? With me, with the organization?
Start with you. Let's go personal first.
Okay, we'll go personal. I have been involved in domestic violence work since the beginning of my social work career, which was started in 1995. So we're looking at a long period of time, and was doing social justice work prior to that. That was more involved with pro-choice work. Actually, I was first trained in domestic violence on Cape Cod in 1991. So perhaps the desire to be in this field, to work on gender-based violence, on violence against women work, is been in my life for a long time. And I'm not like a young person, just turned 60. So this has been my career. Thank you. Thank you, Kip.
Same. It's great to have made it this far, isn't it?
It is great to have made it this far and wonder about the next 30 years. It's true.
Yes. First 2/3 done.
Yeah. Doing such great work that I wish I didn't have to do anymore, and I could actually, go paint beautiful art like what's behind both of you. Anyway, I was an art major undergrad, and then went to get my master's as a social worker and went right into my internship working in domestic violence because that's what I wanted to do, and worked my way through a lot of direct service work with survivors. I was working in Florida and ran support groups and met with individuals, and really, as happens in social work, you learn on the job and really learn from the survivors with whom I was getting to work with, as well as, the training that I had gotten in my social work schooling. So really recognizing that it is survivors who lead this work and define how we need to do this work. And that's where it started from in the 70s in the grassroots movement of the domestic violence. Women were bringing women into their homes and keeping them safe. And then there was consciousness raising groups where there was more conversation, and the grassroots movement really grew. And that's where my heart is with this work, even though it's become really professionalized over the years, which is hard to do because we need money to actually make it happen.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah. So in Florida, I did all the jobs. I worked in shelter, I worked in courthouse, I worked in the community, and worked my way into management positions. And that was still in the 90s. And when my partner and I moved out here to Portland, we wiggled my way into this amazing Multnomah County community of providers, which I revered even early on because they are a real collaborative group, and was really happy when I got to finally join Raphael House, which I did. So I worked in a couple different places, but I joined Raphael House in 2010.
Okay.
Since 2010, I started as the programs and services director. So using my social work background, helping to build and grow and nurture the programs that are here. In 2019, my mentor and colleague, the executive director that was here, retired, and I took over as executive director. So now I do administrative tasks instead of doing the love of this work that wanted. Yeah.
Someone has to, right? Well, thank you for taking on that role. Let's talk about some of the programs that Raphael House runs. I think that is, people have a probably more monochrome vision of it, so would love to hear more about that.
So we've been around since 1977, along with a lot of our community partners that we work closely with. Bradley Engel, Call the Safety. We've all been around for a long time. And in that time, we were a domestic violence shelter and housing, and we've grown over the years. In 2006, we added a prevention education program, which has grown. I mean, I could talk about our programs the whole hour that we have together.
It's a good
Uh,
start, but yeah.
but right now we have a beautiful, diverse version of how to support survivors that is about confidential emergency shelter. Actually, last night I was at a fundraiser last night, and somebody asked me where we are, and it happens all the time. People are like, "Oh, you do great work. Where are you located?" We can't tell people where we're located. We
Right.
have to stay in a confidential space because not only are people escaping violence and living in our shelter, in doing so, all of our other programs and admin and all these things, we're all located in the same building. So to keep the survivors safe, to keep the staff safe, to keep volunteers safe,
Absolutely.
keep children running around our courtyard safe, we can't tell people that stuff. So that's a super important part of our work. Along with shelter and our housing program, which supports survivors who are living in scattered sites throughout the city and the county, we have a domestic violence recovery mentor program, which we started in 2018, which works with survivors who are not only facing domestic violence or trying to escape domestic violence or are survivors in one way or another, they're also dealing with recovery or facing addictions. We know that those two things are correlated in some cases and also run side by side. Abusers use addiction as one of their control tactics to keep somebody under their thumb. Survivors use substances to deal with the trauma and the pain and what they're experiencing. So those
Sure.
two things can really be very much part of survivors' lives. And this is a unique program to Oregon, possibly nationwide, that we're supporting survivors in both these, dealing with both these issues. That's a really and we work closely with treatment and our community partners with that program. Treatment
Fantastic.
and recovery services across the county.
Yeah, I remember reading about Amy Winehouse's life.
Mm,
And one of the things was the partner she was with had said that he wanted to keep her sick because if he kept her sick, she kept him. So
Mm.
her music career obviously was financially, helping him, but he
That's
needed her to
terrific.
stay sick so that she wouldn't leave him and get better and, realize that she was worth more than being with him. So that was a DV situation that no one really actually talks about because it's not always about hitting people.
And I think we hear over and over again, especially when we're talking about unhoused folks or people facing addiction issues or what have you, is that there's a service interface, but it's rarely intersectional, that you're trying to address multiple challenges. So that does sound like a really unique thing as far as the conversations we've been having, that you're trying to look at all the different challenges and bring in the help needed to help people get through all of that.
yeah, because it is intersectional. Everybody that's dealing with homelessness or coming worried about their home and if they can make the rent the next month or the mortgage the next month.
Yeah.
There's always intersections. And when domestic violence is part of that, it makes it differently complicated that is
Yeah.
not always seen or talked about. Families aren't the ones that are catching the news on the street because they're not putting a tent up somewhere and bothering the business owner. They're living with somebody who's really dangerous because that's what's known, or they're couch surfing or coming to one of the very few shelter beds that is available in the county or hoping for one. And that in itself is a complicated process. If
Yeah.
trying to make a call to our system, and we try to made it as easy as possible for survivors to call us, but to make a call when in those little moments when somebody isn't around that is going to overhear that, who isn't tracking your phone log, who
Right.
or and it becomes very navigating that risk is a big deal, and we don't even take into the consideration how hard it is to actually get into shelter on that level.
Yeah, absolutely.
I remember, so I was a women's studies minor in college, and we talked about these things. And I remember reading about in the 70s, of course, when some of the laws were changing, empowering women, more women were feeling more courage to leave. But that also meant a number of them were starting to live on the streets. So the demographic was shifting. And we still see that today. The one thing that I think, if you're in this industry or you know somebody or you've grown up in a household like that, you know why it's so hard to leave. But can you tell the folks who will be listening to this podcast why it can be so difficult for somebody to leave a domestic violence household, and maybe some of the misconceptions exist that permeate the narrative that's out there?
Can I call you by your real name? Because I can't even remember the other
Go
name.
ahead.
Yeah,
Thanks, Kat. I don't remember your
It's fine.
I already
because
forgot
you
it
are
too. It's all
disgusting.
good.
I'm going to start with just love and just call that out, because a domestic violence, like you said earlier, Kat, is not just a punch. It is not somebody getting hit in the face. It's about a intimate relationship where people come together, and the victim or the survivor has their heart really invested in this other person, as the other parent in the family, as somebody that is they're bonded to in a very deep, personal, emotional way. And abusers are really good at pulling somebody in and before they show abusive behaviors. And abusive behaviors are really subtle. They are slowly isolating somebody from their family, from their friends, from their job, from their religious community, and that doesn't look like I'm not letting you go there. It could look like that person's kind of a jerk. I don't, why
Yeah.
hang out with them? It could be really subtle. And so what happens is that survivors question themselves instead of
Mm.
questioning the person that it's creating this, what is a term that is very popular these days, this gaslighting um, situation. And there's real love that somebody feels, and there's trauma bond that somebody has, because if somebody is being really loving and affectionate, and there's sexual chemistry, and there's lust, which is also a really important factor, and also then turning around and hurting them, or physically, emotionally, sexually, um, psychologically, as you were saying, like making somebody stay sick and with addiction, or with health, or just not feeling well about themselves, then there becomes a real bond that is destructive, but also really tight. So that's something we don't necessarily talk about. What we usually talk about, because we have to be really brief and with sound bites, is that economically, if there's children involved, and these are all real, there's that emotional content, but there's also the real piece of, like, economically, there's a dependence, or a survivor can be dependent on the abuser, or which is often the case, that the abuser is dependent on the survivor, like what happened with Amy Winehouse. And then there's a sense of responsibility that I need to take care of this person. So that's a complicated piece. There's having children together, so there's a natural, like, I have to be, this is the person's father or mother. There's the real thing that rises to the surface always is there's threat of violence, for future violence, or actual being killed. So, Kat, you and I were talking beforehand about what just happened in Louisiana.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the discussion was what happened before that man killed that entire family, is that there was a discussion around leaving, and I believe probably around child custody.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know the details of it, but that's what survivors are afraid of. And because somebody's actually threatened it, or because they indicated that that's going to happen. If you leave me, I'll kill myself. I'll kill the family. I'll kill you better watch out. Whatever the threat is, survivors know this person is capable of,
Yeah.
of something really dangerous. And so they
Yeah.
don't leave.
Yeah, no, in that particular case, Shamar Elkins said, I'll kill you, my kids, and myself. And media just keeps talking about how it's a mass shooting. And it's not. It was domestic violence and it was premeditated. That's also
Yeah.
something that I don't think we talk about, is that this level of violence or control, power, everything, it's premeditated.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You don't unconsciously go, oops, I hit you.
No, it's a pattern of control.
Yes.
And both people know that. So the survivor's walking around on tiptoes, making sure that the next thing's not going to happen.
Right.
And the abuser is tactically planning how they can keep control.
Right.
And sometimes it seems like it blows up and it's out of control, but there's strategy around that as well. Even
Uh,
that other phase of like, oh man, I didn't mean that, or I'll never do that again.
yeah.
That's part of that. That creates that trauma bond and belief and connection.
And for friends of mine that have been through this either directly or indirectly, there's always I think what doesn't doesn't seem clear to people, even if somebody's living in a dangerous situation, um, there's still love, there's still connection frequently, and that somebody who is a serial abuser still can be a very kind person at times, or loving, and also promising I'll do better. And it gets really hard to just escape that, especially when you're in fear of what could happen. And I'm not in a position to share some of the stories that I know of, but they're horrific, and some have ended very badly. And I it's just such a difficult thing, and I think our society, especially our society, doesn't value the role that hyper masculine, alpha, whatever they are calling it today, that whole culture plays in perpetuating all of this. And I'm curious about how, once somebody can get to safety, what are the common things that you're seeing that are helping people unravel their situation, and getting them to a safer understanding of what being self-sufficient as possible, and a healthy place looks like.
Well, first, I want to say thank you for calling out that we have not escaped a society that allows for misogyny
Mm,
forever. And we are in a particularly hyper misogynistic world right now. We have
yeah.
a president who is um, just that. And so thank you for calling that out, because it makes this work even harder. And having been in it for over 30 years, I'm like, dude, I was supposed to be done. This is, we just
If
like,
only.
and it's so far back.
Yep.
It's exhausting.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. Yeah, this Rape Academy thing that just came out too. I don't know if that's on the
Yep.
table to talk about, but
Oh, absolutely. No, I think it's indicative of the entire problem, right? And exacerbated from this systemic, endemic culture of misogyny and marginalization that seems to, like you said, doesn't seem to be getting substantially better, and possibly substantially worse as we're going along.
and that makes it harder for survivors to reach out, despite the fact that we're here and we're not
Mhm.
going away. We know how to make a lot with the little funding that we get. We know how to do a lot, and we're very creative with the way we navigate the funds that we have. And the staff that we have at Raphael House, and that the staff throughout the county are dedicated people. They are people that care about this and believe survivors, and many of us are survivors ourselves. So we come with it with our own experience. Thus, there's a lot of empathy and value. So to answer your question, Kip, the fact that the people that are in this work really, really care and value what survivors are bringing to the table and know that there's strength in when they come, even in the very worst time of their life. That is the ground floor where we all have to start. We need to believe them. We need to provide resources for them and provide that like a glimmer of hope that there's going to be a change in their lives, because that will grow and grow and grow as they get to, use our resources and be able to get their feet under them. And we see it all the time. And just being able to do that trifecta is the scaffolding of how we move through all of our programs, if that makes sense.
No, no, it does. I appreciate that.
We have to have the resources and some money. Direct
Mhm.
client assistance is super important to be able to hand to somebody. Rent,
Mhm.
eviction prevention, those are the things that help them build safe and stable homes. And I'm trying to think of what happens when somebody comes into shelter. We have a pretty complicated process to make sure that the building is safe, that they're safe. So they go
Mhm.
somewhere else, and then we give them directions on how to get here with like
Yeah.
the Batcave sometimes.
You have to be, though, because you run the risk that somebody will show up and try and get them or hurt you. I mean, I know the reality of that. I used to work at the DV clinic when I was in law school.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
It's
there was a
real.
lot of safety plans and a lot of switch this car at this corner and pop this person over here. And people don't understand. And when they talk about it, media and also people who are trying to be supportive, they often kind of detach themselves from it.
Mhm.
It's that 1,000-foot view, or it's that educated, like, well, we live in a society that is patriarchal. And it's like, can you get real for a moment? This is a person's life. And instead of just saying, I'm sorry that happened to you, which is nice, how about you be kind and stand up and say, men should fucking stop doing this? And it's not just men. We know this. There's also same sex abuse, but statistically, I believe it's still very much a heterosexual thing that is reported. I do see it in my community, in my lesbian community. I do see women who embrace some of the same attitude and some of the same power and control, and it's damaging.
Yeah,
And
it's about
and
behavior.
and like we try and speak up about this, but then people are like, well, you know, blah blah blah. We'll work on it. And we just have to give everyone grace, and it's like there has to be a boundary with grace.
Whose grace comes first, or whose needs comes first is how yeah.
Yeah, and it's the thing when you're a little kid, you watch TV, you watch cartoons, you're very clear who the bad guy is. And then you grow up and like Kip was saying, they're not always bad. Sometimes they're good, sometimes
Mhm.
they're whatever. My parents were abusive. I was abused. I've been in abusive relationships. My dad was not always a bad guy. Did he do terrible things? Yes. I have scars on my arms. There's a reason there's so many tattoos. And I talk about it and people just go, I'm sorry. And it's like, well, you didn't do it, but what are you doing to stop it? Or what are you doing to change the narrative that's out there? So I think the thing that drives me nuts is we see it all time and again. And we were talking about this even with the Louisiana incident. It's always passively mentioned that there was a perpetrator. It could be like Kat was hit, but it's never who actually did the hitting. So I think my question to you is, how would you love to reframe domestic violence, and how should we be shifting that responsibility so that even folks we know who support this work can get better at even their own words?
We need to hold people accountable. I mean, I think that's what you're getting at, and it's even in the language. She was abused. He abused her. I'm just going to use the hetero framework right now, but he was abusive, so he needs to be held accountable for doing this. And what we don't do a good job around is, well, believing women. Really, it's like I was driving behind a car yesterday. It said "believe women," and did these two women who were killed in Louisiana, were they believed when they went to the police or to the family or to child welfare? What kept them from being ultimately safe? And
Right.
we know they weren't safe even prior to that because there's a history. I'm part of the fatality review with Multnomah County, which is part of our Family Violence Coordinating Council, FVCC.
Mhm.
And we look at cases that happen locally, and we do a deep dive into the how this happened so we can understand how we can do better as a system moving forward. And we've come up with recommendations over the years. And it is one of the hardest meetings I go to because we're doing a deep dive into both an abuser, a perpetrator, and a victim's life
Yeah.
and their parents' life. And what we see are, overall overarching failures of the system to identify how to make change early on. And we just don't, it's not blame on those individual systems. There's blame on all of us to not step back and dig into that and fix it.
So I think that's something that you brought up a moment ago. One of the things I know I wanted to explore is that you've been doing the work for 30 years. You've seen Multnomah County when you moved here, all these great organizations out there doing things, and you're involved in these joint efforts to figure things out. But we know we know resources are hard to come by, money, support. What is your experience as far as when you're looking at these really hard cases that have life and death impact often? Are you, without throwing any particular agency or person, you know, into the limelight, what support should you be getting that you're not getting? Are you seeing the right people come around this and engaging in a meaningful way? Or I'm guessing there's going to be more that could be done. I'd love to get your perspective on that. And just to throw in there, I know that Portland Police Bureau has their own special groups that are supposed to be going out there and engaging in a helpful way, but that doesn't always happen. The sheriff's department has a role to play here. Measure 114 has a role to play here. There's all these, again, intersectional things that should come together to help. And I really like to hear more about your experience and what's lacking and what is working, of course.
Such a big
Yeah,
question.
I'm sorry if I'm putting you too much on the spot there.
So as you're asking me the question, I'm picking up like, oh, we'll do this and there's this. And this.
It's a lot. Yeah.
Well, let's see. Your initial question is what is lacking. And
Yeah.
my
I think
initial
that's the most important thing that I'd like to understand.
and this answers a few other questions. It answers a question that you asked earlier, which is what else? What do we need to do differently? And I said we need to hold abusers accountable. I also believe that what is not funded and what we need to do more of is prevention work, and that would be in all systems. But and this is now one of our cool programs that we have here that we've had since 2006. We have a program in collaboration with the Volunteers of America Home Free that is prevention education program in Portland Public Schools. So we have advocates in those embedded in schools that are working with high school students, all ages of high school students, all gender backgrounds of high school students, all levels of being in relationship, learning how to have safe and equitable relationships. And so to me, that is what we have to invest in.
Yeah.
And it's alongside holding abusers accountable. So that's a school-based project that can also be in other systems. I wonder how that would look like in the police department. Can there be prevention embedded into their work that brings in the expertise of community partners like Raphael House to help
Mm.
prevent in preventative ways or capturing those maybe low misdemeanor domestic violence cases that are called out, or when they're called out and it's like they take it very lightly, there's actually some prevention work that happens there. I'm just making this up right now. I haven't thought deeply about this, but we are reactive to when something's already been far down the road and we need to capture things earlier. Can all systems look at it that way? That would be
I love that. Yeah.
And I don't know where the barriers are to that, except sometimes there's political will and not sometimes, there's always political will. And
Right.
we see this in the housing, the houseless and what's happening with the Metro bond and what's going on with that. We need to recognize that we have to invest in people in a different way to help people stay housed and safe, and that homelessness there's many different, I'm going on a little tangent here, but there's so many different things that cause homelessness, and it's not just what I think the media has latched onto. Domestic violence is the leading cause of homelessness amongst women and children. Like, we have to see that as a real thing. And when they're not homeless, they're living in danger.
Yep.
So neither are good situations
Yeah. Wow.
or a good choice. How do you make that? How do you make that choice as a person who's trying to protect your children?
Yeah. That's impossible. Yeah.
It's impossible.
Somebody I follow named Karen Attia. She was one of the last opinion writers at the Washington Post.
Mm.
She had been fired. She was one of the last Black writers at the Washington Post. Her class at Columbia University was canceled, so she had started an online school called Resistance Studies, and we talk about race and media. I took 2 of those courses, but I've been following her Substack. So she's been writing about this extensively because it ties into DEI for her. It ties into the statistics of Black women tend to be killed at a higher rate statistically than white women in DV situations. And one of her sentences that got me, she said, "Men will kill you when you're in the house with them." This is not perfect quote, but she's like, "They'll kill you when you threaten to leave. They kill you when you do leave. They'll kill you when you're pregnant."
Well, how do you make
How do
decisions?
you,
Yeah.
and how are you supposed to find, I'll call it courage, but it's even more than courage sometimes to take that risk and go and know. I do a lot of divorce, and that's a very low level thing. It's an emotionally charged thing, but I've had email threats from the other side. And it's like, okay, this is the most dangerous time right now. You're getting ready to leave your partner.
Mhm.
It's like,
And you safety plan with them. Yeah, I had a call. I usually don't get phone calls from people who would normally call our 24-hour hotline. But I had a call from somebody who was escaping another state, was not in Portland, but was in another city and was trying to get up to this way. And I was not the right person for her to call. I didn't have the resources, so I gave her the right resources. But I said to her, it is the hardest thing to ask for help.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
it, what we survivors work so hard to walk carefully, keep everybody safe, keep the abusive person, in a state of calm, or keep the risk low. And so and do it really isolated and by themselves. And so asking for help for any of us as humans is hard, but when they ask for help, it is a big fucking deal.
Yep.
And we have to honor that. So another point of how hard it is to leave. And
Yeah.
choices are that I'm going to kill you this way, there's no escape from that circle.
Mhm.
There is
Yeah.
escape from that circle. There is escape. We're here.
It
We're
just
here.
feels like there isn't sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're
And
not alone.
no,
Yeah.
I
I'm
do want to know though. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Kevin.
no, no, go ahead, Kat.
Oh, I was going to ask, I know with the big, beautiful bill, there were a lot of cuts. This is a federal question to a degree. And I know other organizations that also deal with sexual assault, domestic violence were deeply affected. How badly affected was Raphael House, if at all?
With a big, beautiful bill.
And like the federal grants and even the state money, because I know Kotek then had to cut funding.
Yeah. We are, I'll tell you one significant piece that has to do with our prevention education program. We were applying for another round of the Office of Violence Against Women grant, which is OVW. It's through the DOJ.
Yeah.
And the administration has changed the certification language to say all this DEI stuff, like you couldn't use the word women or advocate or gender. And that is the heart of her work. So we chose not to go for a 3-year grant that basically funds that program. Portland Public Schools funds a small portion of that program, and I'm super grateful for that. And they recognize it's an important part of their system and supporting students. But that was a big decision to say we can't apply for this grant because I'm not going to put my advocates in danger of getting called out by some parent who hears us use terminology or talk about LGBTQ IA rights and relationships. No, we can't do that.
Mhm.
And we didn't want to actually, quite honestly, draw attention to ourselves in a way that
Yeah.
feels dangerous as a small organization that needs to keep doing the work. And I know that a lot of community partners are, making those kind of choices as well.
At the heart of it, so stupid, but has real world impacts. I think that's a great segue to what was on my mind next, how people can help get involved. What what do you need from financial, material, or us uh, going to public people and or people in office saying, "Why aren't you doing enough?" And I'm not leaving till you do. Like go chain ourselves to a desk or something because I'm down for that.
Awesome.
But yeah, what can we all do to help you and your organization's work?
So, well, there's always funding. There's always
Mhm.
a welcome donation. Ongoing funding is helps us actually plan and stabilize and strategize for the future. That's super important. On our website, there's a great in-kind donation page so you could see what kind of culturally specific hair products we need that month, or do we need baby carriages, baby strollers, or there's new basketball. I just walked through our yard on my way in this morning. I'm like, that basketball looks like it has mold on it. We need basketballs. I mean, we have a lot of kids. With 60% of the people on our
Yeah,
are kids, so there's a lot of kid needs. Volunteers, it's the usual nonprofit ask, but one of the things that I think is specific around domestic violence is that we are going back to what Kat you said earlier. Nobody really wants to talk about this. People say, "I'm so sorry this happened to you," but pull away from it. This is a community problem. This is an epidemic in our country but it's locally it's on all of our shoulders to bear some responsibility. And
yeah,
we can't as organizations don't do it alone. We work really closely with each other, and we having it not be such a hidden conversation. And to your point, both of you know somebody have experienced it yourself. I have as well. There's
Mhm.
not anybody in this community that hasn't in some way,
yeah,
shape, or form. And that sucks. Like can we have that different for our kids? I would love that.
yeah.
So
No,
having conversations and bringing it to when the city council is talking about when they're talking about that, where they want to put the money that is supposed to go to the homeless community,
Mhm.
that there, that's a that making a difference in our lives as homeless providers, but are not often seen as homeless providers because we're domestic violence providers. But we are doing work that's intersection that is real. So bring if any when there's child welfare cases, where's the domestic violence. There
Mhm.
can be domestic
right.
violence in that. When there's a police case that is a mass shooting, the majority of them are there's been domestic violence already. The shooter is a domestic violence perpetrator, is in the majority of the cases. And another stat is one of the victims has been a partner. But that guns are the whole gun conversation. We have to recognize that abusers can't have
Mhm.
access to guns. And that's a whole other soapbox I would love to go on at another time, but I imagine we're getting close to time.
I think my final question is because well, yeah, when I was in law school and I had to write one of my final papers, I wrote about the link between animal abuse and domestic violence,
Mm.
and me being me segued into serial killers. But there's a very strong link.
I'd love to read
There
that.
is. Oh, the only copy I have is a draft, and it's absolutely horrendous because, not all the things were linked in, the sentences were janky, but the psychology's there.
Mhm.
Mm.
Every serial killer started out practicing, and every person I know who was involved in some sort of childhood upbringing that was tough, we'll just say tough. And we know the stats, animals are always threatened. So some people don't leave because the animal's threatened, or some people don't leave because they've watched the partner do something horrendous to the animal. I did an externship. This trigger warning. Somebody had microwaved the cat as a threat. So the partner didn't leave.
Yeah.
And also the child was being severely starved. So these are all related. We don't talk enough about this. We don't talk enough to tell the stories. We dance around it. We do a lot of passiveness stuff. I want, this has been a very heavy podcast, and I appreciate it a lot because I don't think we talk about it, and we have to. And if this podcast makes it easier, or Emmy, just you saying like, hey, there are ways out, get somebody to say, oh, I was also abused. What can I do? That's kind of been
Yeah.
my hope today. But we can end on a fun note or a shit talking note. What is your take on the trad wife crap that's going around now?
I'm disgusted by that. I'm really sad. I'm so sad. It, it's we could laugh at it, but I'm like, what do we? It connects shit. It's shit talk.
I
Yeah.
mean, it links back to all of this.
I think it might have been The Onion who did a article headline saying trad wife influencer sent back to 1800s to experience what they've been promoting and wants to come back immediately, right? Just
Yeah.
there's I keep using the term bonkers, but there's a bonkers level of just stupidity out there that has real world impact on people's lives. And I think what you're saying, Emmy, I totally agree, and Kat, is that as a society, we can't turn away because it's a hard conversation. We can't turn away because we know people involved, and if you start speaking out, you might lose some friends. Well, they're shitty people. You should call them out. But if you know somebody in the situation, if you feel comfortable, either give them resources or say, I'll help. I'll be the conduit to what you need. And I think we even shy away from that because we don't want to put somebody in a spot. Um,
And to always be there.
yeah,
So when
no matter
they
what.
don't leave and they're still working through it, because it takes 7 times statistically, and it's we know it's hard, and it's, as a friend, it can be painful to watch your friend or loved one or family member keep going back and keep getting hurt and making
Yeah.
excuses for somebody that's harming them. But um, you got to be there when they actually, through that entire thing. So when it's time, you're there, and they have somebody to go to. That brings me to tears. That's super important.
I have a friend who's just done that for a friend, for a long-term abusive relationship, tried to help, couldn't get anywhere, like, "I am here when you need me, so please reach out," and that person did recently and is hopefully permanently out of that situation, but just hearing, "I'm here for you," I think is huge.
Mhm.
Lastly,
Plus, I have one more
I
thing.
yeah, no, please.
It's a happy thing because, Kat, you brought up animals, but we just had somebody from Australia come here to talk specifically about research they're doing on animals in domestic violence shelters and the importance of that. So just so people know, and so you all know, all of us take animals. We have probably 4, 5 dogs in shelter right now. So they don't have to be service animals. They don't have to be emotional support animals. And most of all, you know that this is part of somebody's family, and they're not going to leave if their cat's going to be microwaved. They're
Yeah.
not going to. So they bring their animals here. We had some bunny.
That is phenomenal. I think a simple way people can help, even if it's only $5, donate cash, but also the in-kind donation. It's something that I've tried to do also. Like if we're lucky enough to be homed and have too much shit like I do, there's almost always something that you can part with that's going to help someone else. Tell people how to find your organization, the different ways that they can connect. And you mentioned the website has an in-kind current needs thing.
Yep. Yep. So our website is raphaelhouse.com, and there's a list there. There's also some other connections in terms of donating. There's a pretty easy drop down menu. And in terms of donations, because we're a confidential location, we have a donation drop at a different site. And we usually have a volunteer or community engagement coordinator who's there and meeting people and greeting them and bring lightly used items or new items in. So those are really wonderful. We have a great relationship with the Oregon Food Bank, but food items are welcome. One of the things that is a challenge is fresh vegetables. So if there's a group out there that has some sort of a way for us to be able, we handed out like pounds and pounds of food every week to survivors who got beautiful fresh produce. And to start that up again, I'd be thrilled.
Thank you for that. I do a lot of work or planning work within food security, and that just picks some ideas. So I'll pull some threads and follow up with that. Also, some local farmers that do good stuff, especially with their church and have extra produce. So thank you so much for joining us and talking through difficult things. And I love that. I assume also you would take some donations of pet food and stuff.
Oh
So
yeah.
yeah,
I was just thinking about that as well. Absolutely, always.
I'm like I know friends who are like, I don't have money to help someone with human food, but I can absolutely feed a dog.
Yeah.
So
That's great. And like if there are folks who run veterinarians, if they run or other like connections with businesses where we can get some pro bono connection like that, so somebody can get their shots for their dogs or get their teeth worked on, those kind of things are invaluable. And we get direct client assistance funds, but we don't get enough sometimes for all those things, and we have to be very thoughtful about how we support folks.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No. Thank you so much. It's really good talking to you.
Yeah,
And meeting
you
you.
both as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Really can go on for a while.
No, you're
Okay.
welcome.
Take care. Thank you both so much. I really
Yeah,
appreciate
thank
it.
you both. It's great fun.
Thanks.
Progress Portland is also on Facebook and Instagram, and we have event listings and updates on our website, progressportland.org. There's a content form on our website if you'd like to help out or have questions or comments. Our theme music is by the Portland band Helvetia.